Good morning. Today is February the 9th, 2026. It is 12:12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I am Yahweh Elohim, Yahuwah. I am the God of heaven, the Creator, in the flesh. So today, I'm going to cover a couple of different things, but something that kind of freewheeling it today. I don't have really an agenda. Most of the time I kind of wing it. But so today's conversation, if we were to look at historical figures throughout history, right? And if you were to take the Bible, for instance, and if you were trying to make assumptions or assertions about any character, do you think that in whatever story that encapsulates that person's entirety? Does that give a true sense of who the individual is, more than what the individual is? Because a sticking point with my churches, Christian and Jewish, is that they get hung up on doctrine and theology, and then they think that the Bible, that has been twisted by man's doctrines and opinions and thoughts and interpretations, that I, as Elohim, meaning God, am supposed to conform to what they want, versus them to get to know me. You see, by having such large gaps in my appearances to humankind, a lot of things quite literally get lost in translation, such as my name, such are my teachings, such as what is my actual name, and even what is my incarnate body's name. And why is it Joshua? Right? Why is it Yeshua? Why is it, this particular name? Well, because that name means that as Yahweh, this is my function, coming to earth to help deliver mankind from evil, one. And two, once they are pulled out of the water, right? If we're talking about a ship liner going through a gale force hurricane, I see the sinners, those who are breaking commandment, whether they realize it or not. But commandment breakers are they're overboard. They're in the ocean. They're being tossed. They're at risk of drowning. They're at risk of dying when they don't have to. And I am able to, throw a life raft and get them over back on solid ground. But a part of that is stop breaking commandment and stop using a name that I find disingenuous. Because as Yahweh in Hosea, or as Yahweh in Yeshua, or as Yahweh in Joshua, each have the same function: to deliver and thus to save a people. That's it. The modern era is challenging right now because you have a lot of very infantile technologies. So this is common. I'm going to try not to get off topic, but I'm winging it, so I don't really have a guide or anything. So this happens when humankind starts to get into these types of technologies like AI, like internet. The first thing to happen is, right, humans, how do we make money, right? So everything is slathered with ads, everything is kind of falsifying, right? Everyone's trying to get attention, everyone's vying for money. Meanwhile, I usually get drowned out. And that is also what's frustrating, that there are supernatural components. There are things that obviously I do that confirm that I'm just not some random person online. I'm the actual incarnate God of the Bible. My name is Yahweh. When I go upstairs, I am still Yahweh. When I am on earth, I am still Yahweh. And my blended name, which I elected myself, is Yahuwah in the flesh. When people are trying to say that they're developing a relationship with me, the God of heaven, it is disingenuous when they're not even using the right name. That is, that would be very difficult to try to have a deeper, more truthful understanding of who I am, what is my purpose, what is my function, and why. Imagine that, with anybody, right? Let's look at, a job candidate. So let's say somebody is going to be hiring for a job and they get that resume, right? Well, the resume is going to be highly focused on what that individual was doing in his or her professional career. You understand? So the resume, most of the time, isn't going to have what the candidate's favorite foods are, what the candidate's personality is when working with teams or when working solo, or what challenges the candidate may have. You see? And the entire Bible has been written from the point of view of essentially witnesses, and how humankind has witnessed, interpreted, and penned down in that moment, it being at least the closest to truth. And then, given time, and not just 50 years, not just 100 years, not 500 years, not 1,000, not 1,500, but over 2,000 years. Over 2,000 years. And even in the appendages section, this in no way encapsulates what life was like for Yeshua or me as Yahweh in Yeshua. And again, I don't read. I have never read the full New Testament. I really just flip around on the occasion. Yeah. So, point I'm making is that, you could read that resume, but until you get the actual interview, most of the time, and it's funny because as in my previous careers, my previous, humankind careers, I've been a manager, so I've hired people, and more often than not, right, it's just the resume, right? It's a name, a couple of key attributes, and a little bit of experience. But mostly, I need that person, right, in that office for me to get a sense of them. I need to know, what are they about? Who is this person? Because 100% of the time, when I would hire somebody, I never hired off a resume. The resume was a very brief informational, and honestly, they're written by the person themselves. So a lot of times, I, not only as Elohim, in hiding back then. Now, I mean, I'm open to the public. But my point is, back then, most people don't even self-write themselves very accurately. Whew. Ooh, I don't know. Japan or California? Angel Gabriel, you direct him. Maybe not Japan. Maybe not Japan. And so that is kind of what's frustrating, is people are wanting to marry the scripture because, from my point of view, it is they're just in love with their club. They're in love with Christian doctrine. They're in love with the Bible. They're in love with religious things. They like the social dynamic. They like having a perfect figurehead that in their mind, right, is all these wonderful things. And I am. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not. But it's important to know me for who I am, not just what I am. This has been, right, if you look at it again from my point of view, starting the human program on Earth was never intended to be a separation from me to humanity. It has always, in some shape or form, been to expand life, and for me as Elohim to engage in life, aka humankind, to assist humankind with not only their purpose, their adventures, but also to ensure that the program continues in the right direction. All too often, I'm seeing the very people that are in my churches more of a detriment to me and my churches than they are helpful. Because what's more heartbreaking than anything is to see people like Pope Leo, when I'm genuinely extending an olive branch and communicating to Pope Leo, and as the boss, I get no reply, right? Or I get like this no contact order. That's very frustrating. From being me, God incarnate, I'm genuinely trying to make relationships with the earth. I'm trying to say, hey guys, like, not only am I here, like, let's get busy. Let me show you what I can do, but I want human cooperation. Because I just don't want to continue to do, right? But then humanity gives the credit to Trump. They give the credit to talking heads on TV. They give the credit to randomness. They give my credit and glory away to everything, including Jesus. And it's weird, because this is where I really have a pinch point with Christianity, because some Christians, at least in my local area, they call me Jesus. Their explanation is that my name being Joshua is actually Jesus, and like I'm saying, that's how they reconcile that. At least they get a gold star for knowing that I'm God on earth. That's like, at least that's getting somewhere, right? That's getting somewhere. Versus a Christian who is waiting on Jesus, which again is a false name, and then they're trying to pin down this. That's what I mean. They're hanging their hats, and this is why I call them appendages and not doctrine, because the witness of anybody, of Paul, John, Matthew, Luke, Mark, anybody, any of these saints are writing down their own personal testimony and, in times, their own commentary. They have the right to do that. That does not mean that it is prophetic. That does not mean that it is true. All too often, people take what Malachi, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, what Jonah, what whoever said, and then say that, oh, well, Yahweh's expected to do this. He's expected to behave like this. He's expected to look like that. And instead, I direct you to what is it that I said. What is it that I said? If you can remove the filler, right? and I've said this, the Bible is very bloated. This thing is pretty thick, to be honest. And even in its molested form, there is enough, right? There really is enough. Yeah. You know, that's what I mean. Because at the end of the day, right, as I've said this, it'd be like writing a documentary on Abraham Lincoln. But then let's say Abraham Lincoln came back from the dead and he's sitting there and he's like, hey, I want you to correct my own biography. And the biographer's like, no, I like it this way. This is the Abe I like. This is the picture I painted. And it's like, okay, do you care more about your own success peddling your autobiography of me? Or do you genuinely care more about having a real faith with the real living God in a tangible way? Like, you see what I mean? This can be not spun, I don't like that word. I only think it really should be spun or spider webs. But, you know, again, it would be the equivalent of looking at a resume and then you're looking at the person, looking at the resume. You're never going to see any of the things that the resume says because they're verbs, they're actions, they're things that the person must do. You see what I mean? And when the person is in the interview, right, they get to kind of have a calisthenic conversation, right? Conversation is big. Why did Elohim give mankind a voice? So I could talk to you. Why does mankind have ears? So you could listen to me. Why does mankind have eyes? So you can see me. Those are very basic fundamentals. And it's disappointing that a lot of Christendom and Jewish churches, I have the biggest struggle with churches. I really do. I have struggled with the Jews. I've struggled with the Christians. I mean, but my point is, you know, so is this checkmate, right? The same checkmate, believe it or not, that me and Yeshua had back in Old Jerusalem, and it was very similar, right? Where Yeshua is, you know, kind of in a way like, look at me, guys, like this is happening, you know, and I'm in this situation, right? I'm in Yeshua as a spirit, as Yahweh, but as Yahweh in Yeshua, right? I'm kind of driving the car with Yeshua. And so, point is, right, that was a very, very big moment. And obviously, like, the most religious people that should have known better were the very ones that killed us. If you want to just say it that way, plainly killed us. And as I said, right, the crucifixion was not in the hands. It was in the arm. It was right here. And I do have the scar, so you can actually see the scar. I don't know. This angle's weird. But point is, being one, this is where humankind has to kind of take a little bit of a lesson in divinity. Because as the first person spirit, as Yahweh, who I am, right, when I'm in heaven, I am myself. But in order to be among man, I have to be born on earth. Just the same way as I create babies on earth is the same way I put myself in earth, right? So I put myself in earth, and what may be important to humanity, what may be important to Joe Schmo teaching Bible theology or church pastors praising the false name, like whatever, it still at the end of the day comes down to most people are superficial in their faith. They're really unbelieving. And 3, they would rather have like just what's on the resume. And then it's almost a reverse thing when sitting down, that person's like, I'm looking on the resume. That's not what's on the resume. You're not the right candidate. Like, it's like, what? And then I just kind of laugh because I'm like, okay. Like, I get human skepticism. I truly do. And you should have a discernment, right? I expect everyone to have discernment. It took, well, I wouldn't say it took like 2 years, but even when, I was just kind of coming out, before I had the level of clarity that now I have, because it's kind of like waking up and kind of like not learning anything, but instead just remembering and then having my own experiences, which like then comes full circle. I'm like, okay, now all these things make sense where they didn't make sense before. Now I know who I am. Now I know what I'm doing. And the thing is, I never just ask anybody, right? In the flesh or in the spirit, I never ask anybody. Just, hey, believe something for whatever. Don't believe in fugazis. And that's why I want to build the true church on earth the way it's supposed to be done by me. Because the way the Pope does it is the way the Pope does it. And all these churches, as we see, they're too big to fail, right? They have this thought process that their organization is so big they're never changing the name to the right one. They're never going to actually listen to me, the God it's about. And these are themes that we've seen all through the Bible. Like, truly, these are themes that we've seen all through the Bible, where people would rather be married to cultural Christianity. They're more happy being married to the words of Malachi, or married to whatever rabbi said, or how the Pope says. And then again, mankind chronically trusting in faulty mankind to give them a sense of approval of me. Well, I'm here to tell you, if you use that same logic, then we see why Yeshua was murdered, because they didn't believe what he said. What he was doing was not lining up to what Pharisees wanted, right? He wasn't quacking and walking the way a Pharisee wanted him to quack and to walk. Truly. And even back in the original testaments, right? When Hosea went to Yahushua, and the exact same thing would happen, right? The people would stay in their tents, right? And they didn't want to come out and listen to Joshua or Yahushua, right? They just didn't. They didn't. They wanted, whatever their false heart wanted. Everyone's different, right? Some human would say, if you healed my great-grandmother, then I would be a believer. That's not how this works. Somebody would say, if you had long hair, and I do have the blue eyes, but I mean, that's the human syndrome, right? Is humans are easily led astray by what looks holy, right? The false image of Jesus, the false teachings, and it's not that Yeshua, or me as Yahweh operating through the flesh of Yeshua, those teachings were real. I have given the earth 1-to-1 same teachings that were sat under date trees, and I did give to the original apostles. And I had a strong warning to apostles to not let religious people, to never let this happen again. Those teachings are not even found in the New Testament. Ad nauseum, multiple times, multiple weeks at a time, I gave sermons about warning believers in just the God of heaven, the God of eternal life, the God that's a builder outside of this world, but is the builder of this world. I gave warnings about people to don't fall for religiosity, because 100% of the time it's going to blind you to who I am and what I am. It isn't I, as Elohim, that needs to change. The world needs to see and make a choice. Either come to my side of the fence, come across that line in the sand and say, I'm going to stand with God and I'm going to accept him for who he is, and I'm going to learn the teachings that he's teaching us. I want a people that can come to me with a fresh perspective and a fresh set of eyes and fresh ears, and they can come to me honestly and openly and just say, Father, boom, help me. Let my spirit help you. Let my teachings help your life. Let my videos be a witness to truly who is I, Yahweh in the flesh, the glory, the majesty. It does exist, but it is a smaller, more personal witness to each and every individual person. Which is why I can't stand people, places, things, mainly religious things, Jewish and Christian, right? Because they all embrace the Fugazi. And it makes me mad. It would make anyone mad with the right mind, you see? That would be like being chastised, right? If we're talking about the manager hiring someone based on the resume, and then they hire the person, and that person goes and gets a cup of coffee, and the manager's like, you didn't say you drank coffee on the resume. The person's like, okay, I didn't know I should, right? And the manager's like, I thought you said you were good at Microsoft Office. What are you doing on Google? It's like, what? Like, how does that even make any sense? Like, isn't there a general expectation for a living, breathing creature such as I, whether I'm God or not? I mean, I am Elohim. I'm saying I have feelings. And I have strong feelings, mainly about my churches and why so many components are wrong. And it's very concerning that when witnessing the Turning Point USA show, the first singer, Asherah had to mute it, and I just walked outside because I was not happy in the least. It got a little better, but then again, how am I ever going to correct my own autobiography when we're still peddling an impossible, superficial, false image and a false name? The first commandment is have no other gods before me. So if you're not using my name, you don't obey my commandments, you don't even know the right teachings or the right interpretations, then you're not in my religion. You are not establishing any relationship with me as your heavenly Father. You are not ever going to move past the gates with falsities in your mouth, your eyes, or your heart. These are the same teachings I sat under date trees and talked about for hours. I would go into teachings 4 to 10 hours long, to a point where apostles were taking shifts. And no, I did not eat or drink anything. Just like, well, now I've changed that because now I'm drinking coffee. Now we have modern niceties. But my point is, these are the same warnings I gave them. Why are none of those warnings in the New Testament? You want to know what ticks me off about the New Testament? There was some, excuse my language, but there was some damn good teachings in there. Or that should have been in there. And every one of the heavy hitters, every one of the really, I hate to even say this quagmire, but this come to the real Jesus moment is when I am teaching things that are genuinely so profound to the human experience, but humans are bored. Or it's not showy enough. If you want something that tickles your senses, if you want something that's mind-blowing, go watch a George Lucas film or go watch Mr. Beast, who I do not like. I do not like that man. And as Elohim and as a person, I am allowed to have dislikes. I hate to break the news to you. I dislike sinners. very, very much. I absolutely pass no judgment on someone's race. I pass not even judgment on someone's religion. I pass judgment on what's truly in the heart and in the mind of the person. But then it's even frustrating, right? Again, as kind of the manager with the resume. But instead of me as the manager holding the resume, well, we could do it two ways. So let's do it the first way. As Yahweh, I'm holding resumes of humans in my churches, and I'm going, you say you pray, but you're praying to the wrong name. That explains why I don't hear you. Number two, you are telling people that you're saved because of the sacrifice that me and Yeshua gave, versus seeing the lesson as religious people have chronically been a royal pain in the heavens butt, and its king who is I, and that without people that have a genuine interest, love, care, and affection and devotion to heavenly biblical principles, who is myself, if you don't know who the boss is, you're never going to know the rules. And if all the supervisors are corrupted, you're learning from corrupted supervisors, right? That's a problem. That's the modern day church. And a big root of that is money, right? Because churches are like, I mean, and honestly, I hear this. I hear this from churches. I'm not even kidding you. And I hear, in whatever combination, oh, Jesus, I know your real name, but I could never say that on Sunday because half the church would walk out, or then I would have to be forced to teach Hebrew, and I don't want to do that. And honestly, I get tons of human justification, tons of human excuses. And at the end of the day, are you willing to sacrifice truly? Are you willing to sacrifice those things that are not true? Put them on the altar, and it's going to be painful. It should be. It should be. It should be. And it is an absolute wash if someone says, well, 40 years ago, before you were born, Junior, I was saved by the Jesus, and it's, guys, as God, the real God, I am actually not very superficial whenever it comes to names. I have answered prayers for people who have been on the wrong team. I've answered prayers to people who have prayed to Muhammad. I'm obviously not Muhammad. I'm God. I have a genuine interest in humanity. I have a genuine dog in every fight that a human takes a breath. I am not that superficial that I'm going to be hoity-toity. But it does get down to the hoity-toityness when people are trying to say that they know me. Because you don't. If you knew me, you'd knew my name. If you trusted me, then you would be in that elevated position to tell others, to teach others. But you see how so far, nothing, right? It's crickets. It's crickets, because people would rather watch a George Lucas Star Wars type of thing than to learn. I am a teacher at my core. I've taught angels. I've taught mankind. That is my strength. I teach the right ways, and I teach on the consequences of not doing them. I introduce supernatural elements truly at the bare minimum, because here's how I like it. I like mankind, humankind, to get the victors. I like to see all my children be raised up to be good examples. I like raising people up on pedestals to say, hey, look at this good human. Look at this beautiful family. Look at what they've gone through, and look at how they've persevered. Now I want others to take that same accomplishment feeling and to move forward and say, okay, I'm trusting the real God's here. I'm going to trust him, and we're going to go forward. Stop hanging on to dogma. Stop trying to hang on to what religious people, because what's their motive, right? Their motive is money. Their motive is fame. Their motive is power. Their motive is all things that I have warned against. I've warned against these things ad nauseum in the Old Testament, in the New Testament appendages, and now in the Third Testament. But I'm going to take 5. My butt is numb. This chair is terrible, so I will reconvene momentarily. We're back. So, a couple of good talking points. One, obviously talking to the wife, about kind of the current video, which she hears a lot of it when she's not on a meeting, but she'll be getting on one here in like 4 minutes. So, but, what brings me back to, again, my frustrations, right, is most humans really do tell the truth about 60% of the time. The other 40%, they usually lie because they don't even realize it, right? Well, if I'm telling you my true name, and historical evidence, archaeological evidence, not only backs that up, but confirms it. But even if you were to understand the Bible as one full book, and it is about one God and one God only, that shouldn't be that big of a stretch. And then I bring this squarely to pastors, teachers, preachers, priests, popes, rabbis, anybody who has any type of interaction with the Bible or me or prayer or intercession or whatever. If you as a shepherd are unable to go into your shepherd's pen and grab a sheep and shave that sheep for its benefit because the master of the field told the shepherd to do that, then you're not fit to shepherd my flock. That's really a principle that I taught disciples, I taught rabbis, I even taught Nicodemus. And it's even more infuriating that people to this day are obsessed and in love with holy places. They would rather spend tens of thousands of dollars to go visit a road that supposedly was walked on by me or whatever. Because guess what, guys? There was thousands of Yeshuas that walked those same roads. There were thousands of men who were Jewish who were crucified on the cross for crimes that didn't even happen. But there was only one God from heaven who is Yahweh, who inhabited in the flesh of Yeshua, and who inhabits the flesh now as Yeshua, Joshua, whatever. But my point is, I have a fundamental problem with my churches because none of the shepherds are willing to go shave a sheep. In fact, the shepherds are being held captive by the flock. That's insane. That's insane because your church leaders are not leading. You're not leading. You're not telling the truth. And that's what I mean. I want you to be able to have at least one service where a preacher or a pastor is telling the truth. And I don't mean skirting the truth, because I see that so often. Pastors that are uncomfortable now that they know my name, now they're uncomfortable with that, so then they just go with God. But there was a lot of them. They go with Jesus. I'm not in South America, right? If I'm going down to South America and they call me Jesus, I say, okay, well, linguistically, I'm in South America. That jives. I'm in America, North America to be exact, the United States of America. If you want to use my flesh name, it's Joshua. If you want to use my true name, it's Yahweh. If you want to combine them both, it's Yahuwah. But do you understand that when the following has been built on lies, this is what I warned Peter about. Because as soon as governments or city-states get the whiff of a new religion that could gain traction and obedience from a people, they take it and they run with it. And then they begin modifying it, they critique it, because they themselves do not possess eyes to see, ears to hear, or even a heart to know who I am and what I am. Do you see how they're trying to use technical knowledge? And that's my problem, right? So the Bible is corrupt. It's absolutely corrupted. There's parts in there, a lot of parts that never even happened. They were additional stories that Rome thought was going to help build the religion, help build faith, help build And it's like, guys, as Elohim, do you see my creation? Do you think I need help with anything in the creation? And do you think that there's anything humankind other than keeping it clean and not destroying it? Your absence of doing something is more of a help than doing something to humans most of the time. If I teach this, and then this Sunday, a pastor, well, I'm going to write it this way. I'm going to do it this way. So then who's God here, me or you? You see what I mean? And this really comes down to, right, religious hobbyists. So a lot of my Jewish rabbis, this is my thing with you guys. You guys are hobbyists. You guys know the Bible better than I do, hands down. But you know what I do that you can't do? I can create. I can give life, and not artificial life. Humans, you guys are trying to build like imitation robots, and they still look terrible. Your AI is only as good as the humans that make it. I, as God, can make the bee. I can make the bird. I can make the goat and the cattle all the same. That's why I'm different. I have a permanent home in heaven. It is a realm that is outside of your entire dimension. It is just as real and just as firm as the earth domain is. And we're going to be stuck in this, like, are we going to be stuck here forever? Is that what we're going to be doing? Are we going to be stuck here forever? Because I'm never going to tell a lie to gain favor with my churches. I am never going to jump over the side of that line to go into an untruth because it appeases humanity. Every time in the past I have ever appeased humanity, it has turned out terrible. That's why I won't do it. If you want to get to know the real God of heaven and earth, who is I, Yahweh Elohim, Yahuwah, Joshua, Yeshua, Yehoshua, then know me. Know me. Don't just read the resume. Know who's in front of you. Who is teaching you? Who is teaching you the hard stuff? Who is coming down on pastors and preachers and teachers and saying, you're standing in a pulpit as a shepherd, but yet your sheep are holding you hostage because they don't want to hear the truth and you're too afraid to lose money? Then you're not like me. You're not being Christ-like. You're not willing to give up everything, including your own life, for the truth. Because guess what? That's who I am. That's who I am. And Commandment 1, thou shalt have no other gods before me. So even if you wanted to look at it as a Trinitarian, which I'm not a Trinity, I am fully Yahweh and I am fully Joshua. I am just one Elohim, though. But I'm saying, even if you wanted to cut it up, right, into threes, then if I am separate from Yahweh, at any point in the human imagination, do you think I would ever want to bring my name to glory? Does anyone think that I would want to bring my name to glory? Because that's not the name above all names. Jesus is not the name above all names. It is Yahweh Elohim, Yahuwah is the name above all names. So, let's start giving credit where credit is due. Let's start going back to the Bible and having hard teachings. Let's not have teachings that attract millions of other pests, right? If I go out to my beehive and I start just putting out tons of food and I'm just liberal about it, I'm going to get beetles, I'm going to get ants, I'm going to get 28 different types of other bees that are going to cause problems. I'm going to get all kinds of extras. I don't want that. I want that pure honey. I want those believers to sit in pews and they're going to have a revelation and they're going to go, wow. Okay, our God loves us enough that even through the abuse and the disingenuous name and the fanfare and the cultural impact that Jesus has had, our God is actually so merciful, so loving, and so caring that He's willing to see past that to help people who are unaware. And instead of humans taking that and using it against me, saying, he's fine with Jesus, we're good, Guys, you should be self-inflicting your shame, saying, we abused the name of our Heavenly Father. We've twisted His word. We've abused the real doctrine. Like, we have lost our way as a church. We've lost our way as the Pope. Like, and you know what? There's not one human I see willing to stand up and admit that. No one's willing to just stand up, put their hand up and go, I failed. And I'm man or woman enough to say I failed. But I know that my God is great, and He's big, and He's huge. And He's willing to see past everything for one thing: willingness. I said this at the beginning of my coming out publicly, that intent goes a long way. But it gets harder and harder and harder to turn a blind eye towards every Sunday service starts out breaking the first commandment. And it's not even a name that's what I mean. I can't use that. That is proof of the Roman Empire that corrupted the faith. I told Peter, get behind me, Satan. Why did I say that? Because I knew exactly what was going to happen. Because it always does. And the same thing in the Old Testament's true too. The actual events at least are recorded a little better. But the longer you go, the same thing starts to happen as the New Testament. Certain things that instead of me as God myself, right, interacting with mankind, it starts to get lesser and more palatable for humans. And then it just starts to kind of metamorphosize itself into something different. Like whenever I approach a fresh human, they're not defiled by the church. They're not in love with rabbis, right? They're not gaining favor from religious figures. They're not giving vanity and fanfare to stars or musicians or presidents or prime ministers. Because if anybody's doing any of those things, then you are far from me. That's fact. Mark it as a witness. You are near me when you think and meditate on my teaching. When you take that teaching and begin applying it immediately. When the living water that only I can provide is the source of your strength. It is the source of your teaching. It is the source of all things. Even churches that know me, you are a dead cell to me. You're useless. You are ineffective at spreading the message, at spreading the news. And that's a shame, because I've given so many, especially small churches, the opportunity to become the center stage of me. That should be great. Like, that's what I mean. Like, I'll try and break it into a parable. I don't know. Maybe I'll piece it together here, because, like, let's say Google didn't exist yet, but yet you have, 5 different, like, mimics, like 5 different types of Google, but the real Google hasn't been rolled out yet. Now imagine, like, me as the founder of the real Google, and I go, okay, you see all these small fries, these small competition. Well, they're not the real Google. They're all pretending to be. Right? The true success of Google is going to be so much higher, so much bigger than investing in, I don't know, blue sky Boolean search engine. Like, I'm saying, like, that's kind of how this is. And instead of me as like the Google going to the top dogs and saying, hey, you've already made it to the top, Joel Osteen. Let me give you a couple of corrections in doctrine and see you up to the top. I've given the opportunity to the smallest churches. I have literally reached my hand out in the flesh, in videos, in comments, in the flesh, in person, in every way I can think of, to give the opportunity to the smaller churches to, in a way, be able to stand up and go, He came to us first. He came to us first, and you've done nothing with it. How am I ever going to give you a crown of glory? How am I ever going to put you on a pedestal? How am I ever going to publicly praise you if everything from the lowest to the highest is acting the same? Because what I see in the religious sector of community and every faucet of religiosity doesn't matter what labels you have on yourselves. Because if you know the right name, you still don't know me. You still don't have any relationship with me. That's a shame. Because so many people talk about, that's what I mean. Like any church service, you turn into any church service, and then I think what are we talking about here, right? We're talking about let's see. But that he will come in the same way he went out. Well, if we take out the fairy tale part of the appendages of the Bible, and we go, so how did Yeshua even was born? I covered the birth story ad nauseum, but this is the first time I'm covering it this year, and I'm not going to cover it in depth because we're at about an hour. But I'm saying he came in an obscured way. He came into a world of 100% non-believers. Half of the people didn't even believe in me as Yahweh in the Old Testament. I'm saying, like, it's not different. There were just a few individuals that were willing to give everything up and obey, listen, and follow the teachings. Because the teachings came with a divine authority that only Yahweh Elohim, who is I, gives. He was killed. We were killed. Why? Because religious people could not see, could not hear, and could truly care less. And what do we have here in 2026? We have the same thing. We have musicians like the Turning Point USA, right? They listen to the boycott, but yet they're promoting the faulty name of Jesus. That again is a proof of concept that Rome distorted their own doctrine and theology because they were trying to separate from the Jews. Like, you see what I mean? These are all fundamental problems within humanity. Human beings, like, just faulty all the way around it. And it's difficult to try to, like, unscrew the situation. Like, it is really difficult. But, so, and then again, when Yeshua was crucified, he was killed. He was killed. And he was put in a tomb donated by Joseph of Arimathea. But Yeshua, his body never animated. Never animated back. That's a fact. That's a fugazi. That is Roman liturgy. Because unfortunately, the truth is not as sexy as a lie. And that's where me and my churches have fundamental differences. Christianity wants to hold on to a lie, and I'm here to tell you, that lie, because you reject me and you're waiting on a lie, that puts us at odds. And that puts you off of the heavens list. That puts you in the I don't give a shit what happens to you list. I don't care what happens to people's mothers if they're abducted because they're praying to Jesus. I'm not Jesus. Why don't you get on air and publicly ask me, Yahweh Elohim, the God of the Bible? And guess what? As a witness, I will ensure she's located within 12 hours. Go ahead. I say do not test me, but I will tell you on this one, because it is for the name, it is for my glory, it is the truth. And that's to my point, right? Is this fugazi. Because again, if someone doesn't know I'm here and they don't know my name, that's an opportunity to teach them. then it's an opportunity to say, the great part is, he's back. He's back. He's working with the world. He's working with world leaders. And I hate to say this too, but at the end of the day, humans are like pawns on my chessboard. I'm going to make moves for the benefit of my kingdom and for Earth as a whole. If humans during that process are continuing, like PT is a great example, right? When PT expires, he might just be up in the scale situation, and what happens, happens. That takes me kind of out of the equation, right? Because Trump is like a pawn, but at the same time, so are so many other people. And it's even sad that I have less of a connection to the current pope than I do essentially an agnostic president. President Trump only uses religion and stuff like that for his benefit. And it is what it is. He's the leader of the Americas for now, and I need to try to make progress in the world as a whole. So I'm saying I'm not going to sit there and look at a chess piece and go, I don't like the way that looks. I'm not going to use it. No, I'll use any and all pieces I can to make progress. But that does not mean that at the end of his campaign that PT is going to be anywhere in glory, that's for sure. Right? He's getting plenty of that on Earth. And it may really just be up to the scales, because I'm not going to waste my time on investing more and more time, imparting more and more wisdom, truly caring about people that couldn't care less about me, while at the exact same time these people are claiming that they know me, they love the false name, they love the long hair, they love the false teachings. Like, then you're in false religion. I don't want you, and I can't use you. So, okay. I'm going to take 5, regroup, see if I got anything else, and then we'll reconvene. And we're back. So a bit of a working lunch here. Made the wraps for me and the wife. Used the real lettuce right from the garden. Just snip it out, give it a good rinse, put it in there. Doing the spinach wrap with some chips. And final thoughts. Final thoughts are simple. Stop trying to approach your creator as just somebody in a book. But know who I am. And know what I am when I'm here. That's not that hard. Because let's go back to the Abe Lincoln thing, right? During his day, if he was called, let's say, Abe, but he's like, call me by my real name, Abraham, because it has significance to him. So if you didn't, it's disingenuous to him. That shows concern about the individual. By thinking that I don't have preferences, you see? That's not knowing me. And then likewise, again, imagine Abe Lincoln is standing right there, and yet people would trample the real Abe Lincoln to go to the Abe Lincoln Memorial. So humanity, stop ignoring the real God, the real Christ on earth, here now, while you're chasing after fugazis. No road that was walked in the past is ever going to help. Visiting holy sites, they're not holy anymore. Why? Because I'm not there. It is only holy when the ground in which I am at, that's what I mean. So, this is the separation. People that can get honest, tell the truth. If you can, then you're going to be a shepherd who's rewarded. If you're a shepherd who's afraid to shave their flocks, then I'm going to take away your flocks. And if I have no shepherds for flocks, then so be it. It's a bit of a godless world as it is. And likely, that's unless the humans get on board, that's not going to change. So, have a good rest of your day.